Colleagues, Right Honourable Peter O'Neill, Prime Minister of the Independent State of Papua New Guinea, colleague ambassadors, Prime Minister's delegation of Papua New Guinea, Secretary General, colleagues, it gives me great honor this afternoon to obviously welcome and receive the Right Honourable Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea at the midst of ACP. Prime Minister O'Neill, as you know, leads one of the leading countries in the Pacific, the biggest island in the Pacific Island Oceans, country of Papua New Guinea with over 8 million people. PNG has been one of the leading countries in Pacific and a strong advocate and supporter and believer of the ACP group of states. It is only befitting that the Committee of Ambassadors can be able to fill time this afternoon to join us to receive and welcome His Excellency, the Right Honourable Peter O'Neill, the Prime Minister of the Independent State of Papua New Guinea. Prime Minister O'Neill, it is an honor for us to be able to welcome you to our ACP House and for you to be able to make time to attend and to address us on this occasion. So without further ado, Prime Minister, I now give you the floor to deliver your statement. Sorry, before I do that, Secretary General, also welcome back. SG joined us this afternoon after a long trip. He arrived about 2 hours ago from Nandi, Fiji. So SG will also be able to join us. So SG, you have the floor before we invite the Right Honourable Prime Minister. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Chairman of Committee of Ambassadors, Dean, Deputy Dean, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This visit by His Excellency Right Honourable Peter O'Neill, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, to the ACP Committee of Ambassadors is a source of great pride and honor to the ACP Group. Indeed, this afternoon, the committee is hosting not only the head of government of a highly regarded member country of the ACP family, but also a statesman who for many years has devoted himself entirely to the economic and social development of his country. A certified accountant by profession and president of the PNG Institute of Certified Accountants, Right Honourable Peter O'Neill worked for several years in the business world for various accounting firms before entering politics. As a successful business person, he served as the executive chairman of various organizations, including the Pangaea Enterprise Limited, PNG Banking Corporation, Rural Development Bank, Papua New Guinea Business Council, Motor Vehicle Insurance Limited, and Port Moresby Private Hospital Limited. Right Honourable Prime Minister entered politics in 2002 and was elected Member of Parliament on the ballot of the People's National Congress Party. He has been a leader of this party since 2006. Prime Minister was appointed Minister of Labour and Industrial Relations in 2002 and a year later, Minister of Public Service. He separated from the government in 2004 and joined the ranks of the opposition, where he rose to become the leader of the opposition from 2004 to 2007. Re-elected during the June 2007 legislative elections, Honourable O'Neill was invited to join the coalition government. He was appointed Minister for Treasury and Finance and later Minister for Works. Since 2011, our distinguished guest has been serving as the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. Since assuming office as head of government, the Prime Minister has not ceased to lay the foundation for improving the living standards of the people of his country through the provision of free health care in all public hospitals and government-sponsored education for citizens in the country. In this regard, as head of government, the Prime Minister has embarked on reforms in the framework of the fight against corruption, criminality, and the reinforcement of human capital development. To this end, his government has increased its budget allocation for health, education, and security by over 50% in order to address the pressing needs in these sectors. At the economic level, the ACP has followed with very keen interest the progress made by PNG under your able and distinguished leadership, as signified by the acceleration of economic growth and the diversification of the country's economy. Right Honourable Mr. Prime Minister, I conclude by emphasizing that your presence this afternoon among the representatives of the member states of the ACP Group, in spite of your heavy schedule, is further proof, if need there be, of the keen and consistent interest that your country, Papua New Guinea, has always taken in the ACP Group. For this, we are deeply grateful. We thank you once again for the honor done to us by your presence here today. Mr. Chairman, Committee of Ambassadors, Excellencies, Ambassadors, I conclude my presentation by pointing out that we're receiving an outstanding political leader who for several years has positively affected the political life of this country with strength and conviction and continues to play a very crucial role in the Pacific region. We welcome you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you.
Well, Prime Minister, you now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair of the ACP Committee of Ambassadors, Secretary General of the ACP Group, Dean and of course Vice Dean of the ACP Ambassadors, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here today with you to give you a short talk on what is happening in Papua New Guinea and of course the Pacific. But before I do that, let me congratulate the new Secretary General, Dr. Gomez, for him and his team for assuming this office, very important office in this organization. I also would like to thank the Chair of the Committee of Ambassadors, Ambassador of Vanuatu, for his leadership over the past few months since taking up this role. Excellencies, as the ACP finds itself at crossroads, it needs to be bold, it needs to be decisive in its leadership in finding the solutions so that we can consolidate our way forward. I believe that the new Secretary General and his team, with the support of all of us here today, from leaders to the Committee of Ambassadors, will deliver on the group's aspirations, as we know. I have pledged our government's support to this new leadership, and I encourage all members to maintain that solidarity and unity of action. This unity was certainly decided by our founding fathers in Georgetown some 40 years ago in 1975. Papua New Guinea as a country will be celebrating 40 years of independence in September this year. Just like the rugged terrains of the hinterlands of my country, the journey has not been a smooth one. But this has also provided some fair share of our rewards as well. Papua New Guinea is blessed with an abundance of natural resources in hydrocarbon, minerals, agriculture, and fisheries. While we are 40 years as a country in a Western style of government, I can assure you that we have 10,000s of years of rich culture and tradition. Certainly the most important resource is our people, with over 800 different languages and diversity in our people that is great. In Papua New Guinea, we have an open, transparent, and very democratic country. We have a very strong economy that has had a positive economic growth for 14 successive years. This year, we anticipate that growth to be close to around 15% per annum. Our national debt is manageable, and we are certainly now running a planned deficit budget until we return to a surplus in 3 years. Our economic factors, including interest rates, are very stable, exchange rates very stable, inflation very reasonable, which are not prone to wild fluctuations. The political landscape of Papua New Guinea is also very stable. Since 2002, we have had only 2 governments. we will return to the people for elections in 2017. In our national parliament, we have an overwhelming number of members who vote for government. We have a very solid majority. This has given us the opportunity as a government to introduce core national policies that our country requires, which include free education, which has seen more children now going to school than any other time in our history. When we came to office in 2011, only 1 million of our children were in school. Today, we have close to 2 million. This has also seen a large increase in number of girls going to school, who are generally marginalized when families had to pay for school fees when they were used to paying for male kids rather than female kids. We also today have a universal health care in our country. This is again contributing to a longer and healthier lives, a very big boost to our community morale, and of course to our country's unity. We have increased spending in our security and justice sector. That is making our communities much safer. We have increased resources to our police, empowered our judiciary, and introduced more reforms in our corrective services. The fourth pillar of our policy has been that we have had a massive investment in the infrastructure development program. We are delivering new infrastructure, rehabilitating old infrastructure from cities to the most remote communities throughout the country. These include roads, bridges, airports, seaports that are enabling our rural majority to take their goods to the markets. But more so, we are also building infrastructure that continues to underpin our economic growth, stimulating businesses, creating jobs, and attracting more investment into our country. Our country, our economy is changing. This has allowed us to attract very large multinational companies like ExxonMobil, Total, to partner us in our resource development. Apart from exporting our minerals, we are starting to also increase our investments in agriculture, fisheries, and of course forestry. The challenge for countries like Papua New Guinea, I believe, is that the same for many of the member countries, is to add in more to this midstream and of course downstream values to our natural resources. Excellencies, another focus of our government that is shared with ACP countries is on how we can deal with cross-border issues that has had a devastating impact in our people and their lives. Such issues like the effect of climate change, pandemic diseases in particular, are areas of great concern to our nation and the ACP community. We are all vulnerable to these challenges. It is my hope that lessons learned from the Ebola crisis and of course a Cyclone Pam disaster will strengthen our resolve as a group to responding to this crisis in a timely manner in the future. I take this opportunity to offer our deepest sympathies once again to those who have lost loved ones and suffered considerable loss from these tragedies. In the case of Cyclone Pam, Papua New Guinea knew straight away that we could provide support to both Vanuatu and Tuvalu. And of course, the ACP group of countries did the same to many of the other diseases, like vulnerable diseases where communities are vulnerable to diseases such as malaria and other epidemics in our communities. Recently, as I said, we saw the terrible outbreak of Ebola in West Africa. It was indeed encouraging to see many of the ACP group members providing financial support, material, and generally moral support to those countries. Papua New Guinea government has added to that collective support. We are pledging close to 500 million euro in this assistance program, and of course to the post-recovery efforts by this community. I am very sure the future for ACP Group post-2020 is very bright. The dedication of this working group on the future perspectives of ACP, which will culminate into a report of Council of Ministers last December, is very much appreciated. I also note that our Secretary General chaired this working group in his previous capacity as Ambassador for Guyana. So we can be rest assured that he is now in a better place to take recommendations of this report to the next level. I think that we all agree that we need to also further improve our social and economic conditions within the ACP Group. We must think of a political dimension and the relationship that we have with the European Union, the post-Lisbon Treaty, and our overall participation within the EU must be re-examined to ensure that partnership remains relevant to the needs of the ACP Group. The landscape is not the same as in 1975, when the Cotonou was negotiated and sealed. The EU membership has grown. Some new members have their own development challenges, which requires more EU budget support. This will certainly reduce the overall resources available to the ACP states. It is therefore important that we reposition the ACP Group to mobilizing resources from diverse partnerships that we have, in groups like the BRICS, as well as within ourselves, to facilitate South-to-South and North-South triangular cooperation. Please allow me to highlight an important aspect of our group come 2020. That is the financial viability and independence. The recommendations of the Ambassadorial Working Group on future perspectives for the establishment of the ACP Long-Term Endowment Fund, it is important in this regard. Papua New Guinea believes very strongly that given the strength of the natural resources of the ACP countries, and of course by developing that we can develop the long-term fund using this strength. This will allow us to be more financially independent in order for us to fund development aspirations, especially in the areas of economic and social infrastructure. In this regard, Papua New Guinea again is willing to contribute to the future perspective agenda. Papua New Guinea will pledge 500,000 euros for this agenda. This is for a feasibility study to determine the appropriate structure of the long-term endowment fund. This year, it is also an important year in terms of the global agenda for the international development. As many of you are aware, 3 most important meetings will be conducted. They are the Conference of Financial Development in Addis Ababa in July, and of course followed by the UN Summit on the post-2015 Sustainable Development Agenda in New York in September, and the COP21 meeting in Paris in December. These interrelated events provide the ACP Group with a unique opportunity to be heard and seen as one unified body and voice. Papua New Guinea would therefore support any initiatives to making ACP Group viable and visible on these issues. While it is important that we focus on these events, I encourage the Member States not to lose sight of the other equally important undertaking, such as the Samoa Path for the small island developing states. I look forward to us taking necessary and collective action in the implementation of those recommendations. The small island developing states, of which 50% of them make up the ACP Group, give rise to issues like climate change, which is impacting the lives of many citizens in those countries. We must take a united position on these initiatives that would protect our people and the economies from uncontrollable carbon emissions. In this respect, Papua New Guinea would support the initiatives of the ACP SIDS and other members of this group, and we call on developed countries to control and reduce their carbon emissions to acceptable levels. We want to see the more developed countries take more responsibility working with SIDS in devising a practical and sustainable development strategies. This can be based on practical use of our sea, of our land resources, through the blue and green sustainable development initiatives to better engage with the global economies. In this respect, Papua New Guinea is a founding member of the Coalition of Rainforest Nations in Africa and South America. This group is dedicated in protecting and preserving the abundant rainforest resources to trade in the global carbon trade market. The group has worked over the years towards COP21 under the REDD Plus initiative. It is hoped that COP21 in Paris will formally approve a carbon trading scheme that SIDS and other rainforest nations in the ACP group could use in their green economic development strategy. Finally, let me say that I have been briefed that the ACP group is seeking to support in hosting the 9th session of the Leaders Summit that was intended to be held in the Caribbean region. I know that this venue is now open for other regions to host. I wish to advise that Papua New Guinea is willing to host the Leaders Summit in May or June in 2016. As part of our commitment to the ACP group, our government will be working closely with the ACP Secretary General and the committees of ambassadors in order to undertake and participate in this event. Papua New Guinea is also going to be a host of a number of high-level regional and global leaders meetings in the coming years. This will include the Pacific Island Forum Leaders Meeting this year in September and the APEC Leaders Meeting Summit in 2018 November. Our government has got the necessary capacity and the logistical support that is required to welcome the leaders, and we are committed to delivering a very successful summit. It will certainly be an honor for us to hold this globally important meeting. And with that, Chairman, ladies, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today, and please keep up the good work that you are doing for our group. Thank you, and I look forward to welcoming you in Port Moresby. Thank you.
Honourable Prime Minister Peter O'Neill of Papua New Guinea, let me on behalf of the Committee of Ambassadors and the SG extend to you our best wishes, and also for a very eloquent statement you've delivered to us. From the Chair, Prime Minister, I picked up two major issues apart from SIDS and commitment to SIDS. It's the issue of your proposal, your government support and pledge on a 500,000 kina to the ACP Trust Fund, which would be established pretty soon, Prime Minister. And second, and importantly, your willingness to host the outstanding summit of leaders of the ACP, as the government and our Prime Ministers. I think these two, among other things, as you said, Prime Minister, as well with your visit to the ACP, and we value very much the relationship we've established with your government as a leading nation in the South Pacific, and also for your time, Prime Minister, to avail yourself to meet the Secretary General himself and to address the Committee of Ambassadors, which we value with great appreciation. As part of our program, I now invite the Deputy Dean, my Ambassador of Benin, Ambassador Charles, to be able to address the Prime Minister and Committee of Ambassadors. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, Prime Minister, I'm very proud and I feel great joy exercising this next task which is to express the thanks of the Committee of Ambassadors for the honour you've done us by visiting us here in ACP House, which is also your house. What you have just said to us and the courageous decision you've made and the commitments of your government to meet the needs of the population of your country in fighting inequality, social inequality, corruption and crime, those commitments are very closely followed by our group, which congratulates you on the progress that Papua New Guinea has made under your direction as regards development, and which is translated into economic growth, in fact. Prime Minister, your country, Papua New Guinea, is representing the whole of your region before the brothers and sisters of Africa and the Caribbean, showing your attachment to the noble ideals of the ACP group. Your meeting with the representatives of the ACP countries this afternoon shows the interest you've always had in the ACP countries. This group, which brings together countries and people, which shares values with your country on a historical level, on an economic and cultural level, is and I'll stop there because we have many values in common, but this is the foundation of the belonging of Papua New Guinea to the ACP group. So your country's attachment to our group's activities was shown once again in 2006 when in Port Moresby, the capital of your beautiful country, when the Council of Ministers of the ECP and EU ECP Council of Ministers was held there. And that was also shown once again and strengthened through the holding once again in Port Moresby in 2008 of the 16th session of the joint ACP-EU Parliamentary Assembly. And I'd like to use this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to you for the welcome, the warm welcome and hospitality that you offered to all the ACP delegations at that historic meeting in Port Moresby. Prime Minister, the common values and features that I mentioned also go hand in hand with common challenges. The first is poverty, and you have just shown us that poverty is not something we have to put up with. Through solidarity, we can fight it. The second challenge is climate change, which threatens our common planet. And we'd like to reassure you, Prime Minister, of the ACP Group's solidarity on the fight that is being carried forward by small island developing states against climate change. Prime Minister, the ACP Group will have a radious future ahead of it after 2015. You have just told us that as if you wish to reassure us further of that. We share that future and your view, but you didn't just tell us that. You also announced a remarkable financial contribution here this evening for our activities. So you joined your words with actions, and we thank you deeply for that. Prime Minister, you have also, once again, offered the wonderful hospitality of your country to host the next summit of heads of state and government of the ACP. So, looking forward to seeing once again your beautiful country, which respects people and nature, and of meeting your people once again, who are so convivial, who have such a ready smile, who offer such wealth of culture. We are looking forward to seeing you again in Port Moresby. But before that happens, we'd like to reassure you, Prime Minister, that we, on our side, will continue with the same level of commitment. Our activities and efforts to make that dream that the future of the ACP countries after 2015 will be a radius future. We want to make that a reality. The contribution of your country to the ACP has been great, but I have to mention the contribution of Ambassador Joshua Kaliné to our deliberations. He represents your great people and country here with great dignity. Thank you, Prime Minister, and long live the ACP group. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Dean, for your excellent expose and your kind remarks to the Prime Minister, which is well appreciated, Ambassador and Vice Dean. According to our program, the Chief of Protocol will accompany. Oh, somehow you west for the floor, Ambassador. You have the floor, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, Secretary Generals, and colleagues. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to add my own words of welcome to you, Honourable Prime Minister, and your members of your delegation, on behalf of the Pacific region. We are indeed very proud to have you in our midst today, Prime Minister. Thank you also for sharing your vision and support with us, and your presence augurs well for the solidarity and unity of our Pacific region and the ACP family. We are a group steeped in tradition that cherish our diversity, seek to uphold the rule of law and good governance, believe in the equality of opportunities for all our communities, and above all, in the eradication of poverty and the attainment of sustainable development. We must never forget the hopes of our peoples, whether in Africa, Caribbean, or the Pacific, for we all share a common and strong commitment to remove injustice and poverty. Prime Minister, as the leader of the most populous and influential country in our region, we congratulate you on your sterling leadership and commitment. The Pacific remembers with deep gratitude your government's timely and generous assistance to our Pacific states who suffered recently as a result of Cyclone Pam that devastated whole communities, especially in Vanuatu. Papua New Guinea's contribution to the affairs of the ACP group has been noteworthy and significant. And PNG also provided the first Secretary General to come from the Pacific region. We look forward, Prime Minister, to your continued leadership in taking our group beyond 2020. Some events and moments are recorded as point of reference in history. Your visit to ACP House today is one such event. The Pacific ambassadors wish you and your delegation safe return, Mr. Prime Minister, and our best wishes to the people of Papua New Guinea. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Luteru, this is Ambassador of Samoa, thank you very much for your remarks to the Prime Minister. According to our program, the Chief of Protocol and DSG would accompany the Right Honourable Prime Minister down to greet all distinguished representatives and ambassadors around the table. So, Chief of Protocol, let's proceed with that.